I've been asked many times over the last several years to do more videos on my Vietnam War experiences. And I've been a little reluctant because some of them have nothing to do with a spiritually based story. It's just simply stuff that happened in the war. And some of them aren't necessarily great, things to remember. But I've been asked again and again and again by my veterans friends in particular to share a couple different stories. So I was going to share one on this video that took place in the spring of 1967 along the Cambodian border in South Vietnam. And we were out flying that day in a Huey helicopter. For those that haven't watched the rest of my videos, I was a crew chief door gunner on a Huey helicopter. And we were flying resupply missions, bringing in mail, ammo, food, taking wounded and sick out. Just basically an easy day for us. No what they call hot combat assaults, just simple, what we used to call hash and trash. Mail call, here we are, whatever. So it was quiet. All of a sudden on our radios, we're hearing there's a lot of commotion going on with some ARVIN troops that we had inserted earlier in the day. We had dropped them in this LZ and there was no resistance, and there was about 300 troops, South Vietnamese Army troops, what we call ARVN soldiers, that were in this LZ. LZ is nothing but a big opening in a forest or a jungle, kind of like a expanse of grass, just an opening. Sometimes an LZ is made by cutting down trees or whatever, but this one was a natural opening. It was just a meadow. It was a really beautiful setting. There was trees around it. But we had a call, urgent call, that they had wounded that they wanted us to, or whoever was the nearest, closest aircraft, which was us. Nobody else was close as we were. They wanted us to go in and pick up the wounded, take them to a MASH unit, and then see if there's any more needs for them. In other words, one aircraft mission. And so we accepted it. We flew. It was only about 10 minutes away. So we're flying over the jungle, just the roof of the jungle. I mean, just the trees and everything. We were about 2 or 3 feet above it, going about 100 knots. And we're going along, and all of a sudden we ask where they're at. They pop smoke. They tell us it's yellow. We see the yellow smoke. We go towards the yellow smoke. That's where the wounded are at. We drop down as soon as we get over the tops of the trees, down to the grass level, 2 or 3 feet. We go right over and we park next to where the wounded are at and the medics. And they had about 8, 10 wounded from a mortar attack that was ongoing. The attack was still going on. There was 300 ARVN soldiers, South Vietnamese soldiers, in this LZ, and they were being attacked by a mortar team of maybe a dozen or less or more. So they certainly weren't outnumbered, but they were getting bombed with these mortars coming in from the outskirts of the LZ, and nobody was attacking them. They were all huddled up and not aggressively going after them. So when we stopped and started loading up the wounded into our helicopter, all of a sudden I look up and I see 15 or 20, then there's 30, then there's about 50. I see all these guys running towards the helicopter, and then pretty soon I see half the group, maybe 150 people, soldiers running towards the helicopter. I'm telling the pilots, something's going on. They're all coming to our helicopter. And then next thing I know, I got hands grabbing my arm and grabbing my leg, and I'm getting hit in the head with rifles and punches and everything. They're trying to get into this helicopter that holds about 6 or 8 people in the back, and they're throwing off their own wounded and stepping on them, and they're panicked. I mean, totally panicked. You can see it in their eyes. There's fear. It's really an ugly thing when you get that many people fearful. And there's no more order. There's no more discipline. It's not an army anymore. It's a mob. And so this is going on. My pilots are like, wow, the mortars are getting closer. I mean, see, us being the helicopter sitting in the LZ, we're a big target. They would like to take out the helicopter. So they're focusing on targeting us So as we're in the LZ for longer that we are, it gives them more of an opportunity to target us. And they were bringing up their mortar rounds, 10, 15 yards closer every time another one went off. So they were walking them up to us. And pretty soon you could feel the explosions, and we would bounce around the helicopters and the dirt and shrapnel and everything else flying, grass flying into the helicopter and on us. So we're fighting these people trying to take off. We can't take off. We can't lift. There's too much weight. So pilots screaming at us to shoot them if we had to, because we're all going to get blown up. So that was not an option that me or my gunner wanted to do. We're not going to shoot somebody over this. Worst case, we'll get out of the helicopter and abandon it. So we're throwing people off. Then the pilots decide to take the tail of the helicopter and start spinning around with the rotor on the back, which is like a big fan, like a saw blade. So they start swirling it around, scaring people off so people would stop approaching the helicopters. No one was hit, but they would duck and crawl away and run away. But we still had 30 or 40 people still trying to get in this helicopter. So we were kicking, pushing, shoving. Finally, we had enough of them off where we were able to lift about 6 feet, 7, 8, 9 feet. And it was really difficult. We were just kind of hovering, and I'm stepping on toes and fingers and whatever I could get on to get them off. Finally, we got a bunch of them off, and we didn't want people hanging on the skids as we were going over the jungle. We didn't want anybody to drop off and get injured or killed. So thank God that we were less than a half a tank of fuel, so we didn't have the extra weight of a full tank. So we were able to get some lift. But we were so weighted down with bodies of people in the helicopter, we needed all the transitional lift we could. We couldn't just go up and out. We had to run the whole length of the landing zone, this little meadow. We had to go from one end all the way to the other and just keep going and going, building up speed, and then just pulling over the treetops at the end and going just along the edge of the treetops until we finally got to eventually enough lift where we were up to 1,500 feet. Made it to the first base camp we could find and dumped all these people. And there was only a couple of wounded guys. All the rest were knocked off, left behind. So we had risked our lives, gone in, tried to do the right thing by taking out the wounded, risked our lives in the process, and were attacked by a panicked army that deserted and should have been back there with the rest of them. And we got a call on the radio to go back and get the wounded. Go back and bring supplies. And so our pilots respectfully, said no, because we didn't see any difference in the results. Nobody had got control of the group of soldiers that were there, and it was still a panicked LZ. So at that stage of the war, I did a lot of new thinking. I went there thinking, hey, we're fighting this thing. We're teaching these guys how to fight. Eventually we leave. They'll be able to take it over. They'll be able to win the war. After that incident, I told myself, this is not winnable. We could train these guys for years to come. They're never going to stay and fight. As soon as Americans are gone, they're going to leave. It really took the heart out of the war for me. But it also taught me something about fear. How fear can just destroy any kind of organization and logic. And this was an army of 300. They outnumbered the enemy. Should have been a problem. Anyway, it was not that a spiritual experience. Nothing mystical happened. But it was something that affected me afterwards when I came back, because mobs of people, whether it's a line to get into the movie theater or get into a basketball game or get into any kind of event, if I got to stand in a line with a whole bunch of people pushing and shoving, I don't go. That part's kind of stayed with me. And when I went to India in 2004 on a train station, and a mob of people trying to get in the train and a mob of people trying to get off, I found that that was something I had to really work on overcoming. So anyway, that's the story. There are more details if you want to buy my book. It's in my autobiography, Warrior or Spiritual Odyssey. If you like this story and you want more, let me know. Push the subscribe button down below, and thank you for watching. God bless.